Hey everyone, it's that time of year. NASCAR season is back, which means my 2022 NASCAR premium package will be available here at RotoGrinders. It's your one-stop shop, lineup HQ, projections, projected ownership, articles, live shows, betting picks, everything. Discord, premium channel. We're going to be running the early bird special for $450 from February 1st until February 21st. So the Monday after the Daytona 500. Once that early bird special is up, we will not be offering a season price again until maybe the middle of the year. We will have a monthly price of $60 a month and a weekly package of $20 a month this year. A couple things that'll be new this year. We're going to do lineup HQ tags for trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. We're going to have a free preview and recap article. And we're going to be doing some prize picks videos throughout the year. They have some new scoring, so I'm excited for that as well. If you're looking to play the 2022 NASCAR season, the early bird special of $450 is going to be your best bang for your buck. It will be available, like I said, until the Monday after the Daytona 500. NASCAR season's here. The Clash is February 6th. So let's get on it. And again, always appreciate the support. So thank you for everyone that's been a part of the package before, and if you haven't, I look forward to working with you this season.
Grinders! Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter. And it's Friday. It's casual Friday. We'll be reviewing yesterday's NBA slate a little bit. I don't know if we'll talk that much about today's slate. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. We got a whole bunch of trades going on, right? Harden, Simmons. That big trade happened yesterday. So it didn't even affect yesterday's slate. I mean, I guess the Nets, Irving, I guess, whatever. You could have played some of them. Blake did pretty well, right? And we'll touch on some MMA for the UFC pay-per-view tomorrow. And I wanted to show you exactly how I build lineups for MMA and like the hack that I make on how to build proper leverage into your lineups, how to build more unique lineups, which I hope that you don't copy, because then hopefully there'll be less unique lineups for me to make in these large field contests. But that the purpose of this show is to help you answer your DFS strategy questions, make you a better DFS player, and smash those thumbs up buttons. I see you guys in the YouTube chat. Feel free to chime in there. Right? You got any questions? Feel free. Infamous Tuck, Jupacalypse, Piercy, I see you in the RotoGrinders Discord. You're new here in the morning. Grant Brown, Kickstart, Johnny Ortiz, Kit Cloud Kicker. Give me those thumbs. First thing in the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live on this channel. Yesterday, I mean, it was a Wizard slate yesterday, right? Like, how many Wizards do you play? And Kuzma didn't look all that great in the first quarter, but he got there, 48 points. Brian got there for almost 10x. I mean, even Hachimura got. The Wizards pretty much got there, right, for the most part. But Hachimura got almost 10x. Denny, respectable. Kispert. 18 for 3,000 is pretty good, but not when some other guys like KCP 26. So I was playing 3 Wizards in every lineup that I was playing. Just a matter of the combinations of them. Because everyone else was out. I mean, they traded Dinwiddie, Holiday. All the Bertans. Gafford didn't even get back into the rotation or anything like that. So really, they ran with what? Anthony Gill played a little bit more than I expected, but it's hard at these prices. Outside of Kyle Kuzma, who was 7,400, one of these 3K guys is going to get there, right? Especially someone like Nito, who's going to play like 30 plus minutes as point guard, like 3,100. Like, I just jammed these guys, right? I didn't jam Kuzma. Like, I had like 40%. Ooh. But I mean, he only came in at 46%. I thought the Wizards came in were under-owned. At this ownership, I expected them to be a higher. I had Nito at like 70% and still under-owned. I had Kuzma at like 58% and slightly over-owned. I had Bryant at like 40% and slightly over-owned. I had KCP at like 50% and under-owned. Kispert at like 30% and about efficiently owned. Denny came in way under. I thought he would come in at like almost 40%. And I had him over-owned at 40%, and he ended up coming in at 17. And Hachimura, I had about efficiently owned around 18%. So I got a ton of these guys, right? And then it's just a matter of, just building the studs around them. My top stud was Luka. And Luka crushed. He had 28 points in the first quarter. 28 real points, right? It's 7 3-pointers or whatever, right? But just around, it was one of those days where I had a bunch of competitive lineups with just a landmine, right? It's a great lineup, and then the Siakam, right? Only putting up 39, right? I Gary Trent is over-owned at 26%, but I still had plenty of them. A lot of people went to Kelly Olynyk. I was over on Kelly Olynyk. I thought he would be about like 22% owned and slightly under-owned. He actually came in at 18. I mean, he only got 20 for 3,700 normally would be pretty damn good, but not on a slate where there's so much other value here. Played a bunch of Booker Giannis combinations. That didn't work out. I played a bunch of Chris Paul because anytime that Booker is way chalkier than Paul, I tend to play more Paul because there's no reason why one should be that dramatically higher owned than the other. I look down, right? I played a bunch of the Raptors, but a lot of the Raptors didn't get there, other than Gary Trent, right? So I was mixing in 1-2 Raptors because Fred VanVleet was out. And, they run a very tight rotation, and these guys could play 40-plus minutes. And didn't work out because Gary Trent just stole everyone's points, right? So I had some OG. I had some Barnes. I had some Chris Boucher lineups. And that didn't really work out. Randall did well, 61. I barely had him, right? So we could look through here and just see the difference between field exposure versus top 1% lineups, right? Giannis didn't appear in anything, right? Because, he busted. The Suns just ran away with that game. Anything else that's interesting here? He says Sengun came in way high, even though he wasn't starting. But I had to do some late swaps out of that. We go to compare exposures. Right, we can see here. This is what you see in NBA like every day. Like Neto, 58% in the field. And I have a whole range of very sharp DFS players, NBA DFS players. 89, 75, 85, 99, 83, 72, 52, 73, 87, 98, 64, 40. Why weren't you playing him? He played like his salary adjusted plus minus was like 9. And he's only 3,100, which makes him even more valuable. Kyle Kuzma, most of the field over, right? Other than maybe E. Hafter, a Hubro, JBC, but 40, 41, 65, 53, 44, right? Same thing for Thomas Bryant. 79, 60, 50, 96, 61, 50, 68. Right. And then once you get down to KCP still, some people went a little bit under, but still 44, 66, 53, 50, 44, 42, 58. And then you just surround them with the, just mid to high range options. Siakam, Luka, Booker, Giannis. Those are the popular choices. Irving. Then you get down to like Chris Paul, Ja Morant. I was over on Ja Morant. Kevin Porter, I had some of. Hamidou Diallo, I had some of. I didn't have any Jeremy Grant. I played Sadiq Bey over him. But I didn't have many Pistons in my lineup outside of Olynyk anyway. Cameron Thomas had a great game. No one. I mean, other than JBC, 20%. He wasn't even expected to start. And then he started. He was 8% owned. I probably should have gotten to some of them. Go down here, right? Alec Burks, right? Kemba started, so Burks wasn't as much of a play. I mean, he was okay. Go through anything down here that was, significantly different. Right? He could have played Delano Banton, whatever, 19 points. I don't know what his ceiling was. I had some of them. Scroll down a bunch. Right? Some Joe Val. Like, I didn't have any Joe Val. Day'Ron Sharp. Kobe for MVP. What's up with the Time Lord? Put up 25 points for 3,600. And then Bam. Not really. Anyone played Bam. Could even take a look. Can we sort by the points column? Yeah. So even if you sort by the points column, it's like, oh, Lowry had a great game. Well, I mean, if you played Lowry and like, oh my God, I called it. It's like, well, not many of the Sharpers players had much of Lowry, or even Steph Curry, maybe a little bit. Like Bam, like nothing, like across the board, barely anything. Steven Adams. Oh, yeah, right. Steven Adams, what a game he had for 5,300, 44 points. He was 2.6% owned. But look, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.7, 0, 0, 0.7, which is what? 2 lineups? It's one lineup in 150. 4%. Kobe for MVP had the most. This is why I always say, don't go by your results, go by the process. If you're like, well, I won all the money, and I had Kyle Lowry and Steph Curry and Luka and Steven Adams and Cameron Thomas and something like, and you're like, yeah, I'm the best. Like, well, I don't know how repeatable your process is going to be when your lineups like no sharp player, no one had anything even close to that. That's typically more luck than skill. We've been one slate out of a long while, but probably going to lose money in the long run. So this is why using results DB and comparing yourself to players that you respect, sharper players, top 50, top 100 ranked RotoGrinders players. Going through the YouTube chat, Joe Adamo says process was good, but I ended up breaking even in my 5-cent GPP 150. No, that's good. Breaking even is a successful day in GPP. Okay, that's considered a successful day. That's an upper 20th percentile outcome. Breaking even. Right? Most of the time you're losing 20, 30%, 15%. That's a normal day, right? That's the normal. So breaking even is above normal. Profiting, you're going to profit maybe 15% of the time, maybe 10% of the time. But just comparing your lineups to other people, right? Comparing the ownership. Did you build lineups with your predicted ownership versus the actual ownership? And going here, it's like, well, I mean, I had Nito as under-owned at 70%, and I had like 90% of them. So what else am I going to do? I probably should have had more. The fact that he was only 58% owned. Right, that's why I could just look down here. Like KCP was 31% owned. I thought he would be 50. And he was still under-owned at 50. So I probably should have had more of that. Booker I had at like 36%. Giannis I had around 24. So it's around the same. Right? Kyrie I had about 22, 24. A lot of the ownership looked very similar to what I had it. Blake was hard to figure out on whether or not people would play him. I had him at like 6 or 8% owned, came in at 13. Jai had around here, around 12. Porter around 8. Diallo around 10. Yeah. I mean, I'm just going through pretty much. I'd Randall less than 8, and I barely got him. So If he was 8% owned, I may have gotten even less. I ended up with like, I think 6 out of 80 lineups with Randall at 6% ownership. At 8% ownership, maybe I only would have gotten him in 4 lineups. Just going through. Not much late swap yesterday. I mean, really. There was anything out of the ordinary other than Sengun not starting? I had Sengun in like originally in like almost 20% of my lineups. And he ended up in like 2. Because his minutes went down by 3 or 4, and his projection goes down by 3 or 4. But then I just late swap a whole bunch of people in. And then you don't get Sengun anymore. Going through the YouTube chat. Jupocalypse says, I could be wrong, but it just seems like looking at exposures without the context of the lineups isn't very useful. No, you're correct. It's better to look at the actual lineups. How leveraged were the lineups? Projection versus ownership. But this is a very broad-based overview of like, oh, I played a lot of this guy. Did a lot of sharper players play a lot or less of that guy? Like that, and that'll give you a hint on what their lineups look like anyway. Because I could go to anyone's lineups here. I could go to like Chipotle Addicts or something like that. Like we go here. Let's go to Chipotle Addict. Chipotle. Make sure we just get him and go through some of his lineups. And I'm like, his lineups look pretty. This lineup looks a lot like the lineups I was making, other than the fact that I didn't play any Jeremy Grant. So like this lineup in and of itself, 3 Wizards, 1 Raptor, Luka, and then kind of fill it in. Right. Just I didn't play Jeremy Grant. So go to this one. This looks like very similar to mine. I mean, these are the types of lineups I was building. Nito, Kuzma, Bryant, 1 or 2 Raptors. I just didn't have a lot of Julius Randle. I had some right down here. Right? Very, very similar. I had plenty of Blake. I just didn't have Jeremy Grant, but the lineup looks very, very similar. Of course, I played 3 Wizards. This is only 2. I go here. Here's 4 Wizards. Right? Here's Chris Paul, Trent, Luka. I didn't have any Jonathan Kuminga. But the lineup construction in of itself looks very similar to the ones that I was building. Right? 3 Wizards, 1 Raptor. I mean, we could go down to the bottom lineups also. Right? Right, bottom, like lineups that didn't perform well, but still were constructed. Look, 1, 2, 3 Wizards, no Raptors, but still a Booker, Giannis combo. Blake Griffin. Of course, I didn't have Jeremy Grant. You go here. Right, here's 3 Wizards, 4 Wizards, 1 Raptor. 3 Raptors, 2 Wizards. There's 4. Yeah, I mean, like these look very similar to mine. We could go to, let's say, go to a petty theft. Go to a bottom line. Go to a lineup that didn't perform. I look at this. Yeah, he plays a little bit more contrarian than I do, depending on the lineup. I don't know. I wasn't playing Jay Crowder. I wasn't playing Klay Thompson. Right, it's Steph Curry. But there's still 1, 2, 3 Wizards, 1 Raptor. I mean, the core of the lineups look very, very similar. They're just 2v2s kind of off. Right here is Booker and Paul together, which I didn't do. Right, this looks like a lineup I would have played. Right, Nito, Pope, Kuzma, Siakam, Blake, Anunoby, 2 Raptors, Chris Paul, Jayshawn Tate. Right, when Sengun was ruled out, I threw him in. He was in a couple of lineups. Right? Take a look down. Yeah, I didn't play any Day'Ron Sharp. But the construction, how the lineups looked very similar to the lineups that I was building. Right? I mean, the lineups are even duplicated. Right? So you could go and look at their individual lineups, but I could tell. I've been doing this long enough And when things are bunched up like this, it's like, everyone's playing this core of like, 3 or 4 Wizards, 1 or 2 Raptors, and then you have a stud, whether it be Luka or Giannis or, Irving or one of these guys. And there you go. And then it ends up being a 2v2. From there. So it's easy to see. I mean, I can look at the exposures and it's easier for me to just look at this. But yes, you should be looking at the actual lineups. Nbot asks, is there a way to manually do this type of analysis for FanDuel? You'd go into the contest that you're playing. You have to go on FanDuel itself. So if you're playing whatever contest you're playing, if you're playing the large field contest, you're gonna have to go lineup by lineup. I'm gonna look for lineups from Brick 75 or E. Hafner or whoever the hell. And then look at their lineups one by one. FanDuel doesn't have CSVs to do this. So you have to do it manually or be really good at scraping the information. There are people that scrape it. So scrape it meaning you have to build your own little script and, to go and pull the information off the screen. As Jubacalypse, you're right. Back to your statement yesterday of having similar, even the same exposures can still yield very different lineup constructions, right? But a lot of times you'll just be 2v2. Like if you're like, oh, well, I had a lot of this guy and that guy and this guy, and I had less of that guy and that guy and that guy too, but I didn't get any of the lineups that they made. If I get similar lineups, they're just going to be like 2v2s, right? And then if you see that you're building significantly different lineups and they end up being more than that, then you go, well, what was the projection of their lineup? What was the ownership of their lineup? And what was the projection of your lineup? What was the ownership of your lineup? Were your lineups projecting slightly poorer because you were playing a little bit too contrarian, or were they projecting higher and you just weren't, you were playing too chalky? That could be one thing. You could look at this and you go, well, Nito, Kuzma, Bryant, Siakam, Luka, KCP, Booker. It's like you're naming a cash line. You're essentially naming the cash line. Like on DK, if I was to play cash yesterday, I think the cash lineup was Nito. It was 5. You're playing 4. You're playing Nito, Kuzma, Bryant, KCP, and Denny Advija, whatever, and then Siakam, Luka, and Booker. I believe that was the cash lineup. For you to play a cash lineup. I mean, obviously there are ways to put in Blake or move around and you get to Trent or something. But if you were playing lineups like that, that was way too high owned. Like those combinations were a little too much, too little leverage for the large field contests. But fine for cash, fine for even a single entry, smaller field thing. Yeah, Kid Cloud Clicker says or whatever says he had to scrape. Yeah. If you're able to scrape on FanDuel without getting dinged. Ding meaning that the FanDuel starts putting up the CAPTCHA and says you've been, there are ways to scrape where you're sending way too many HTTP requests to the server that they tag you as a bot. So you have to know what you're doing. I don't do it, but I mean, I know how to do it. I don't do it well. I wouldn't be able to do it well. And I don't play enough on FanDuel that I care as much to do it. So that's NBA from yesterday. We got MMA tomorrow, big UFC slate, 15 fights. William Knight just weighed in this morning, 12 pounds over the limit. He missed weight by 12 pounds. And you know what they did? They said, okay, we're just going to fight this at heavyweight. So I don't know how those odds are going to have to move. This guy's going to be like 20 pounds heavier than he's going to be way heavier than Grisham tomorrow. I don't know how those odds are going to move, but I have my sheet. This is a spreadsheet that I set up for MMA. Now, the purpose of this spreadsheet is a hack. Like I said, I don't try to do things the most precise. I try to do things as directionally accurate as possible. MMA is very binary, okay? There's 15 fights. There's 30 fighters. Essentially, 99+% of the time, you're looking at the highest 6 scorers into your lineup that you could fit for the salary, right? The winners, right? A losing fighter rarely ends up being in the nut lineup. And when you're playing large field GPP, you're aiming for the nuts. This is more like showdown. You're aiming for the nuts. So it's very rare that a losing fighter is, and typically it's because all the favorites have won, and a lot of the big favorites have scored heavy, a lot of points. And the highest scoring losing fighter, because there are no underdogs that won, ends up being like the guy that scores, 62 in a loss for 7,300 ends up in the optimal lineup. But that doesn't happen. That's more likely to happen on smaller slates. A 9-fight card, which is really small, yeah, then a losing fighter, all the favorites win, and it's the highest price, the highest underdog, highest scoring underdog is going to be in the optimal lineup. But on a 15-fight card, much less likely. And since it's binary, you could go very much by the betting odds for your DFS purposes. Like we look here at our lineup HU, we have like median projections, but like none of these guys are going to the standard deviation of these fighters are ridiculous. Like no one scores these numbers. Like it's very like binomial. They're either going to score, somewhere between 5 and 45 or something like in that range, or like 75 to 125. Like it's like whatever. Now we're down to 14 fights. The Alex Perez and Matt Schnell fight has been scratched. I don't know why, but it has been. So now we're down to 14 fights. Okay. So what I do is like essentially you're looking to score for the nut lineup. The nut lineup on most slates is going to be over 600 points. Your aim is to average more 100+ points from every fighter. Okay. If you can, right. Obviously 100, like the way the scoring is that a first round victory, a stoppage in the first round, TKO, KO, submission, whatever, is 90 points in the first round, 70 points in the second round, 45 points in the third round. And then in a 5-round fight, it would be 40 and 45 and 40 and 40 for 4th and 5th. But out of all these 14 fights, 13 are 3-round fights, and the main event is a 5-round fight. And then you also get obviously points for strikes and takedowns and all that type of stuff. But in order to score 100+ points, it's very hard to score 100+ points in a decision. A decision win gets you 30 points. Okay. The types of fighters that could score very high in 3-round fights in decisions are guys that either put up insane amount of striking volume or grapplers that could have like multiple takedowns and tons of control time and tons of like ground strikes and ground and pound. So you have to weigh that in. That's part of the projection. So some of those types of guys may not have the best inside the distance or round 1 finishing odds. It can still score a lot of points. But for the most part, the inside the distance and round 1 odds correlate the highest to 100+ point scores. Because obviously the round 1 finish, you're getting 90, right? And if you get 90 with a knockdown, that's 100. There you go. So like these round 1 odds to 100+ point scores, the R is like 0.9. Okay? It's very hard not to get 100 points with a first round finish. I mean, you do see it because like there's no knockdown, right? There's submission early, not many strikes, and 96, right? Which is still fine, right? I'm still fine depending on the price. But inside the distance, getting a stoppage gets you more points. So they're more correlated. Inside the distance, 200+ point scores, the R is like 0.65 or 0.7. This is very, very high correlation. And winning is now obviously like winning to 100+ point scores is not as correlative, but any 100+ point scorer is going to be a winner. Okay. I don't remember. I don't think of a time that a losing fighter scored 100 points. It would have to be a 5-round fight. I don't even know. But winning doesn't matter as much. Like as far as my weighting, as far as who do I play? What do I rate them as? So just to explain that, because you could probably translate this to something like NASCAR or golf, maybe some esports, or maybe, I don't know, using the betting lines. So essentially what I'm doing is going, what are the current betting lines on the fighter to win inside the distance and win in round one, and compare that to ownership. Okay? And you can get all these types of odds. I get them from fightodds.io. Okay? Which gives you all these books across the board. American legal books as well as offshore books. Right? So you can see the current betting lines. These are the money line odds. But if you click on any one of these, right? If I click on here, I'll get all the other prop bets that they have pulled. So like I use 5 dimes for all of my odds in here, right? So 280 for Adesanya, minus 280 plus 240 for Robert Whittaker. I haven't updated a lot of this, right? So where's Adesanya? Minus 270, right? So I put that in there. Then you could go and you could see inside the distance, right? Adesanya wins inside distance, plus 165. Whittaker wins inside distance, plus 550. And you could also go down and see Adesanya wins in round one, plus 475. Whittaker wins in round one, plus 1,500. So you could get all of these odds. And I update them every day, right? You could also pull, if you want to scrape and pull them into Excel, you could do that way. I do it manually. So I pull this in, right? So Israel Adesanya, what was the number here for inside the distance? Plus 165. So it went up a little, right? So I put in 165. And then I have a little formula. You know, what's the implied probability of plus 165? It's 38%, right? Right. You could use this formula. You could even look it up. You could look it up. You can convert. You could convert any odds to, just convert money line odds to probability. Minus 110 is 52%. 190 is 34%, right? That's what all these numbers do. Just converting American odds to a probability. And then I'm comparing that to ownership. So our current RG ownership for like Ronnie Lawrence is plus 195 to win inside the distance, plus 500 to win in the first round. So he's a 17% shot, according to the betting market, of winning in the first round, but it'll only be 13% owned. So that's positive leverage, right? That's why his rating is high, right? I'll look at Fabio Charant. His likelihood of winning is low, but he's going to provide massive leverage because he has a 24% chance of winning inside the distance. He has a 32% chance of winning the fight outright. 24% chance of winning inside the distance. 15% chance of winning inside round one. His projected ownership is 6%. Heavy leverage, and especially true if Ulberg is one of the more popular. His opponent may be 44% owned, which means if he does win in the first round, he's going to be optimal at his price down at 7,300, and he's going to knock out almost half based on this projected ownership, half the other lineups in the entire contest. And that's why his rating is so high. Does that mean I think he's going to win? No, that's not what these numbers mean. These are kind of expected value / leverage numbers. That based on 6% ownership, Fabio Charant is the highest in a vacuum expected value fighter on the entire slate. He's a small chance of realizing that, but he shouldn't be 6% owned. If we bumped him up to, let's say, 10% owned, he goes significantly down. Right now he's at 1 point, like he still rates well, but nowhere near before. That's a difference of only 4%. So 6%. Let's say he ends up being 12% owned. Well, now he's just like, he's there. He's okay, right? So it's these, especially on these lower fighters, getting the ownership, projecting the ownership well is paramount if you're going to play this type of exploitative style. Right. And that's why I have multiple columns. I get ownership and projection from multiple sources, and I average them out. And sometimes I even change them from there. So I'll go, no, he's not. One side will have this, and another side will have that, and then I'll be like that. It's going to be somewhere. I listen to shows, and I'll go. This guy's going to be way more owned, or that guy's going to be way less owned. Like we have Andre Orlovsky at 9% currently. Is that going to be correct? He never. I mean, he rarely finishes inside the distance. Maybe he'll end up being 7% owned and not 9%, but that'll bump him up a lot. So that's what I do with this sheet. So it allows me to get this rating. And this is essentially a leverage rating. It helps me build lineups. Because let's say, a guy that projects well, we take a look here at someone that's going to be popular and rightfully so, or something like not Derek Lewis, even like Olberg. He's going to be 44% owned, but it's not like he rates bad. He probably should be close to. I mean, if he ends up being, let's say, 34% owned, his value goes up. But like someone like Ronnie Lawrence, like if I play Ronnie Lawrence and Sharon, like I could play all of the highest leverage fighters on the slate, and I'll have that lineup will probably be unique. Because I'm playing such low-owned players, a 13% owned guy with a 6% owned guy with another 6% owned guy. And then I'm just jamming in the best players. So then I'm just jamming in the best from that point. It allows me to build lines. So I could show you what I would do with these numbers. Once I have the rating here, is that I export, download as a CSV. I'll open that up. And I'll change the ratings column. Once this opens up, I changed the ratings column to be called FPTS, right? Which is what Lineup HQ will recognize as fantasy points, right? So I'll go into the MMA right here. I'll upload that sheet, that CSV. I'll call it, February, what slate is this? February 12th, right? There's no D Silva de Andrade. What happened to him? Is his official name changed? Did they change his D Silva de Andrade? What does it look like in the, okay, hold on. No, I got it right. I'll just change that manually. Okay, so let me put this in. Now I'm getting problems. Let's reload this. So I'm just doing this as an example, because obviously a lot of these odds and everything are going to change anyway. I mean, I haven't even updated some of these betting odds in 2 days. But now we're just loading. Okay. Let's try this again. All right, just go here, grab this. I'll just call it my whatever. No, who cares? We'll change this thing manually. So what's D Silva de Andrade? 0.79. Okay. Let me go to, where is he? Hide unprojected. 0.79. Where'd it go? Or is he in excluded? Okay, so put 0.79. There we go. Okay. So now that I have all of those rating numbers in there, which factors in ownership. So the best lineup that I can make, like if I were to build lineups and not have the same play, the two fighters from the same line in the same fight in the same lineup. If I were to produce, 5 lineups, whatever. The highest leverage lineup would be this lineup. Right? Because it's there. What does an optimizer do? What does lineup HQ do? It solves a knapsack problem for that fantasy points column. How do I jam in as much of that column's number as I can into one lineup? So based on this, the highest leverage lineup I could play is Tai Tuivasa, Malkoun, Wells, Lawrence, Grisham, Durant, and still includes a high, fairly decently owned player in here, right? Because it's already factored into the number. Is this the best lineup? No, this is an extremely high variance lineup. Look, you're playing, a big underdog, big underdogs and guys that have less likely chance of finishing, but it's still higher than their ownership. So it's like when I see 8s, like these are high leverage lineups. Because if you were to build, for their price, if you take a look at the sheet, like I would get so much Durant, I would get Durant in 100% of my lineups because he provides so much relative value at 6% ownership. Do I want 100% of him? No. Do I even want him in my single entry lineup? No. All these numbers do is allow you to make sure you're building lineups that have the proper amount of leverage. What you also could do, like let's say I open this up. Let me open up. Okay, hold on. I need to figure out where this De Silva de Andrade doesn't line up correctly. Let's see. Players for this slate let's take what is his actual downloading the slate file. Just Silva de Andrade? Is that it? Do I put the D in front of it? What the hell? Douglas Silva. Okay, so I have to put the whole name. Okay. That's what's in the slate file. So let me go over and do that. Put this in here so we could at least get him. Douglas Silva de Andrade. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to download this again as a CSV. What I'm going to do is that I'm also, okay, so this rating column, you can't see it. So I'm going to change the rating column to FPTS, but I'm also going to copy it. Okay, I'm going to copy that into another columm, paste, and I'm going to call that column projected ownership. Okay, so PROJ underscore own is what we use. So I'm going to save basically so I could get them into both columns. So I'm going to upload this again. I'm going to, just whatever, February 12th. I'm going to use this. So now we'll be able to see fantasy points and projected ownership as the same, because now your fantasy points, we have no build rules for, but projected ownership we do. So remember, when we built those highly leveraged lineups, 8 point, they have a total combined of 8. Well, what happens if we don't want the highest leverage lineups? What happens if we could now use minimum and maximum lineup total ownership. So let's say you're building 150, for instance. Number of unique players, 1. You just whatever. Salary, who gives a crap, right? Doesn't matter. 47,000, whatever. Doesn't matter. So we're going to build 150 lineups. I'm going to tell you that Fabio Charant is going to be in like all of them. He's going to be in 150 of these lineups. Because he just at that price, at that rate, he's the highest rated fighter for his ownership. Currently, as of right now. Right? See, yeah, here you go. Charant. Right? So fantasy points is the leverage score. So 803. Right? You can see the ownership here. So we can go any direction we want. The lowest is 7.77. So you can play 100 lineups with a hell of a lot of leverage. You don't have to, but you could still make unique lineups that don't have these. I mean, like total salary. What's the lowest salary we have here? 48.4. But these are high variance lineups. But let's say you don't want to make all your lineups like with Fabio Charant, Grisham, Lawrence. Like you're not going to have so much of this stuff. So let's say you want to curtail that. Maximum total lineup ownership 7. Right? Minimum 6. Right? Can we even go lower than probably for 6 is a little too low. Probably 6.5, maybe. Based on all these ratings. The 6 is going to be average, right? Because that's 1 point per. I guess we could do 6 min. No, it's got to be higher than 6. So let's say 6.5 to 7.5. Right? And then build 150 lineups. So now that we're using that column also to give us some type of range, this is one way of doing it. Now we're not using ownership sum, because remember, ownership is already factored into that rating score. We don't need that anymore. We just need it to build lineups that make sense together. 7.5. Right? This is still a very contrarian lineup. Lawrence, Grisham, Charant, Tuvasa, Rowe. Yeah, these are still very contrarian lineups. Right? Go down. Yeah, 7 point. Look, in 150 lineups, like you don't obviously there's only one unique player. So I mean you could switching in and out of a lot. Like look how many lineups you can make that have very similar scores. Right, 7.5. So like you could go even further down than this. So let's take a look at lineups between 6 and 6.5 and 7. As you see, like now Charant is going to come down. Because Charant lineups have all the leverage you could possibly need that it's trying to jam in as much as everything else that it can. So lineups with like an 8 total rating. Maybe you can play some of those lineups that they're very contrary. So here we go. Now we're getting all the Alex Perez now, because now we can afford to spend up, even though Alex Perez is no longer on the slate anymore. Once we go down to 7, see now we're getting some of the lower. Yeah, now it's matching it, right? So this lineup, even though it's less total, like assuming that this fight was on, obviously, like Grisham's not going to be owned. Grisham's going to be like 10% owned. Ronnie Lawrence is going to be 15% owned. Wells is going to be 35% owned. Cannonier's going to be in the 20s. Alexander Hernandez will be, whatever. What's Alex Hernandez? 19%. Matt Schnell is 8. Like these are still these are still contrarian lineups. But now you're fitting them all together. Now you don't have to worry about individual people. Right, just like give me lineups. Look, this lineup is Whitaker, Hernandez, Orlovsky, O'Neill, Lawrence, Charant. Right, like these 2 lineups next to each other, from a leverage perspective, are the same. And it's a 5v5, right? This is a 5v5. Yeah, no, 4v4 because Hernandez and Lawrence are in this lineup. Hernandez and Lawrence are in that lineup. A 4v4 with 2 lineups that have the same leverage in it. Overall. So look, Robert Whitaker comes in at 31% of lineups, even though he has one of the lowest leverage scores. But the whole lineup with him is fine. Right? If we take a look at this lineup, Whitaker, Hernandez, Orlovsky, O'Neill, Lawrence, Sharon. If you play this lineup, most likely this lineup will be a unique lineup. 49-1 lineup like this for tomorrow with Orlovsky. I mean, look, you got guys that like a single digit owned. Orlovsky and Sharon in the lineup. Lawrence is not going to be under 20% owned in the high range. Like this lineup is heavily contrarian. At 7 total. We were looking at lineups at 7.75, 8. This line in and of itself is plenty leveraged to be and most likely be a unique lineup. Do you play this lineup? I don't know. I'm just for UFC, for these large field contests, I'm looking to play as many unique lineups as possible that are reasonable. And this is a reasonable lineup. But it's very contrary. But I'm utilizing the betting odds against the ownership to come out. And then obviously I'm also weighting the projection. I'm weighting things. You don't know how I'm weighting them. I can't give you that because then you'll come up with the exact numbers that I have. And if you can come up with the exact numbers that I have, you're going to end up making you're going to make close to the exact numbers that I have, which means you're going to make lineups that aren't unique anymore because they're shared with me, right? That's the main reason I can't give you the exact number, right? You can be close, right? You could definitely see, oh, well, this guy's a 24% chance of winning inside the distance. He's only going to be 6% owned. I'm going to play a lot of them. That's perfectly fine. But how to get these exact numbers, I can't tell you. Not that they're secret sauce. Oh my God, they're the best. They're not the best. They're just, I don't want you to have the exact numbers I do. Even if you're off by 5%, it may result in, if you made 150 lineups and I make 150 lineups, with a little bit of tinkering, that out of my 150 and your 150, maybe we only share 10 or 15 lineups that are duped. And those lineups are probably duped under 5 anyway. So I don't mind splitting with you. But if you knew the exact numbers, then sometimes we could land on the exact, I could build 150, you could build 150, and we share like 80 lineups between us. So that's the reason, not because it's like secret calculations or like it's not precise. Remember, I don't look to be precise. So this is what I do to build MMA lineups. You could probably do this to build PGA lineups also. Compare the odds of something that is highly correlated to high scores, right? In golf, it would be like a top 5 finish or something. Compare that versus ownership. See who the delta between the two, right? Why is Israel now these 5-round fights are a little bit different because they could score a little bit higher than normal. But you can take a look here. It's like Bobby Green. Bobby Green's going to be 20% owned, and he only has a 22% chance of winning inside the distance. Bobby Green, other than his last fight, hasn't had a stoppage in like 10 years. So his odds of winning in the first round is 13%. But if he's going to be 20% owned, why the hell am I playing a lot of him? AJ Dobson has a great shot at winning inside the distance, 40%, but he's going to be 37% owned. So he's going to be chalky. Rightfully so. He's the cheapest guy with the highest inside the distance. 150 plus 150 for 40%. Makes sense. But he's going to be 37% owned. If he was 20% owned, I'd have a ton of them. Look, if I change 37 to 17, right? 120, yeah, I'd have way more of them. Right? And if 37 was 47, I'd have way less of them. Just based on that. But it doesn't mean I can't play Dobson in lineups. Just that Dobson could appear in lineups that have like Sharon in it. Right? If I'm playing Adesanya, Olberg, well, obviously I'm not playing Olberg and Sharon together. Right? If I'm playing Derek Lewis, if I'm playing chalk in my lineup, then I'm going to need someone like Fabio Sharon in that type of lineup. So what this does is just basically hack the system. So I'm able to now use an optimizer on that number that already factors in ownership. So I don't need ownership sum. I don't need ownership product. I don't need to care about any of that. I don't have to care about salaries even. Right? If a lineup is like, here's a 50,000, let's take a look at some low lineups, low salary lineups. Here's a lineup that leaves 3,000 on the table. That has about the same leverage of anything else. Most likely going to be unique. Right? It's 47.5. Now, on large slates like this with very heavy, there's a lot of heavy favorites. I'm less likely to leave that much money on the table. But you could. You will be unique. Just at like from 9,600 down to like this range, these guys are look at their win probabilities. So most likely you're going to need like probably 2 people from this top range. And you could tell by the ratings that are up here. So this is one way to hack a tool like Lineup HQ to get it to do what you want. Isn't that the theme that I always say? Don't let the optimizer is going to tell you what to do. You tell it what to do. It is a tool. It is a calculator. It is, a little workbench with hammers, and you're building something. So all these settings and everything, use them to whatever advantage you want to use them. However, it helps you build the lineups that you want to build. Right? It's like J.G. Wentworth. It's your money. Use it how you want it, or whatever he says. You could use it any way you want it, or whatever it is. So I just wanted to show you that process, which you could probably do in other sports that are more binary, that don't rely on like correlation or your teams, and like basketball. I don't know how effective this would be. It's the same type of concept of like, what are the chances of this guy going for 60 plus points or whatever, or 8x his salary percentage? And then what is their ownership? And then calculate from there. I mean, you could. Similar concept. I mean, that's the types of concepts I talk about. The theory of daily fantasy sports. How to think like a professional DFS player. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. But I'm doing with this sheet and with this lineup HQ, the exact concepts that this is game theory. This is how to build lineups with higher expected value. That the fighters, that the lineups as a whole have a higher probability of scoring X amount of the nut score than what they'll be owned. That's it. Just like flipping a coin and getting 3-to-1 odds. Sure, I don't care, heads, tails, whatever. I want to keep on making those types of bets. And then being able to scale that up to build 150 lineups like that. Well, that's what I do with my MMA odds sheet. So you may find an intuitive or inventive way of doing that type of thing yourself. That may not be precise, but be directionally accurate. So if you want to learn those types of concepts and more, theoryofdfs.com. And so we'll go over stuff on Monday. James will be back. We only got a couple of NBA games before the All-Star break, right? If you saw the drafting, no one wanted to draft James Harden. No one wanted Durant, didn't want to draft James Harden. That was a little bit funny, but give me those thumbs ups on your way out the door. Thummy thumbs, subscribe buttons, notification bells. We got Grinders Live coming up later today around 4:45, I think, something like that. It'll be on the YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell. They'll let you know whenever the time is. We got crunch time for premium members. We got MMA content also, right? So if you're a premium subscriber, you got the Blenders Game Theory channel inside the Discord where I can answer any more questions that you'd like to ask. We also do group coaching calls. We'll be doing 2 during the All-Star break, one on the 18th and one on the 23rd or 22nd, something like that. So join RotoGrinders Premium, rotogrinders.com/premium. Click on the link in the description for $10 off your first month. And have a good weekend. And don't dupe me in UFC tomorrow. But yeah, I hope you got a lot out of this, and I'll be back answering your DFS strategy questions as I always do next week on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.